Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. It is that time. Welcome. Yay. Hello. Good to see you, Dr. Moira. Good to be here. Yes. Well, I'm going to claim it is the best day ever. So excellent. I am Reverend Valerie Reeves. Welcome to you on Zoom land and those that are here live and in person. Good to see you. I have the announcements today. So Reverend Catherine McKinney is our speaker today. Excellent. It's going to be a great topic. I already know this. Our speaker this Sunday is also Reverend Catherine McKinney, and our singer this Sunday will be Jessie Theory. I don't know Jessie yet, so. Reminder, this Sunday, it is time to move our clocks forward. It is daylight savings time already. It's already March 12th this Sunday, so we will remember to move our clocks forward so that we are on time for service. This Sunday also, after service, our teens will be doing a workshop, and they're going to give examples of what they do at teen camp. They will have lunch. It's a love offering, so if you want to join them, it'll start at 12:30. Right after service, we'll have good snacks and coffee and whatever they're bringing, so I'm excited to see that. Also this Sunday is the women's group at 12:30. They meet every second Sunday, so the women's group is a wonderful, loving group, getting to know each other, exploring spirituality. So you can join them anytime. On Monday, the 3rd, the balance class continues. So that's with Monica Ruth. And it is at 11 a.m. The cost is $10 per class. There are flyers in the foyer if you want to know a little bit more. And then on Tuesdays, yoga class continues at 11 o'clock. Also, the book study group with Reverend Kathy Sinfield. We are reading The Untethered Soul. So that's from 10 to 11, and then some people hurry off and go to yoga right after that at 11 o'clock. So bring your yoga mat. Our Wednesdays at 9:45 on Zoom, the book reading with Reverend Catherine McKinney, Learn to Live, is continuing. It is on Zoom. You can get the Zoom link from the office, and I am knowing that everyone wants to give that a shot so we can learn to live. We do have dance groups. We have one that meets on first Sundays and then one that meets every single Wednesday. So that's from this Wednesday, that's tonight. You could dance, walk in, dance out. The cost for that is $10, and you can come in, walking in, dancing out, and they start at 7 o'clock. Looking ahead on March 19th, right after the service, join us for some Irish music and a wonderful Irish meal made by Dave Slokovich. I knew that I had his name in my head, so Dave Slokovich, and then there'll be some music and dancing afterwards, do an Irish jig. So that is on March 19th, a St. Patrick's Day brunch. It is a love offering. It's going to be a wonderful time. And then just a reminder, the Science of Mind Sunday class, every Sunday there is a study group. You can just join anytime from 10:15 to 10:45, exploring the Science of Mind textbook. There's a wonderful group that leads that. Each of the practitioners and ministers take turns leading that, and wonderful discussions. Happenings, that's every Sunday, 10:15 to 10:45. Right now we are in the season for nonviolence, and that goes from January 30th to April 4th. Today, day 38, because there's 64 days of the season for nonviolence. Today is on kindness. Every day we hear of random and senseless acts of violence. Participate in the counter-revolution of kindness started by Ann Herbert. Perform 3 random acts of kindness and senseless acts of beauty. So that's your charge for today. Get out there and do some random acts of kindness. Give some great compliments out there. Focus on the positive. A reminder, CDs are always available for purchase after the service every Sunday. So if you want to take the service home with you, you can. Also, musicians many times have their CDs available. I do want to say a big thank you to all of our volunteers. Without the volunteers, it would be really impossible, right? Yeah, let's give it up for the volunteers. Thank you to the volunteers. We have our audio techs, we have our ushers, our greeters, our amazing hospitality group. So if you want to join and be a volunteer, please see me afterwards. All right. that is all I have on announcements for right now. So without further ado, let's bring up the Reverend Catherine McKinney.
Thank you, Reverend Valerie, and thank you, everyone, and welcome to Dr. Moira. So let us begin this service the way we like to begin most every gathering, and that is by coming together in consciousness. And I allow my breath to simply slow, and as I slow my breath, I know that it simply slows the thinking in my conscious mind. The pinging that moves around with so many things I think I have to have in my thinking, I allow to simply relax and know that there really is only one thing going on. I am living the mind of God, and I speak these words of truth from I, because I know that I speak for everyone. There is only one thing, and it is the mind of God. I am living in it. I am moving through it. And I am expressing God in everything that I do. And the more that I remember that, the more that I can actively bring that into my life expression, then the more that I know that I am bringing good and very good things, both from my life but in the world at large. And everything that I think is wonderful and good absolutely goes out from my mind, in the one mind that I am in, populating more and good things. And yes, kindness, random acts of kindness, deliberate acts of kindness, spontaneous expressions, and allowing these things to guide my own life, knowing that as it animates my life, it animates the life at large. And that is good and very good. And so I know now, in the moments to come and in the moments for the rest of today and the week, that the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart come from that divine light and wisdom of God. And I know that everything that flows forth flows with an idea toward a unity, toward a consciousness, toward an understanding that life is happening, changing, and moving forward, always for the better. And so in gratitude for my own life, and gratitude for this wonderful place that I find to stand, and gratitude for the people who are here and participate, both here and beyond on the airwaves, I am so grateful. And so I allow it all to unfold as it will, knowing that it is all good. I simply am grateful, and I say, and so it is. And so it is. So I titled the talk that I'm doing today, Agreement. And I did it for a number of reasons. Agreement is such a simple word. And when we choose to agree, we kind of know what we're getting in for when we do that. Ernest Holmes says, it's on page 395, I think. It's one of the general summaries. And he says, the cosmic car is started for you. You get to drive. And you do not drive it by force. You drive with agreement, with unification, and with acquiescence. You have to believe. So the word agreement probably attracted my attention because of this book that I am reading in the study class that we do. And a few classes ago, we began with one of the parables that was the parable of the vineyard. And at the end of talking about that, he talks about that there is a law of agreement that applies in this parable. And very simply, the parable has that a husbandman wanted to hire people to work in the vineyard for the day. And he had his servants go out and find people to hire, telling them, I will pay you a penny for this day's work. And so after some time had gone on, he sent his servants out again and said, hire more people for a penny a day for this day that you work. And he continued on, and near the end of the day, in the last hour, he had the servants hire more people for a penny a day. And so when the harvest was done and the workers were coming to receive their pay, the servants gave them the penny that they had been promised. Well, the workers were aware that some of us had been working all day, and some of us just got here, but we all got a penny. And so they were not happy. And so the servant said, well, did you agree to work for a penny? And, well, yes, but they got here later in the day. We did more work. Did you agree to work for a penny? Yes. And so that is the law of agreement that Jesus was talking about. What we agree to, the vineyard is like our mind, and what we agree to is what we receive. And maybe later on, we're saying things like, well, I didn't mean for that to happen. And so what Jesus had been teaching is that what you agree to is what appears in your mind. I also began thinking about this because of a story that I heard. There was a young man who was in a subway, I think it was a New York subway, waiting for his train, and he heard someone shout to the side, and the man had fallen into the tracks. So he starts running over to reach in to help pull the man out. And before he gets there, someone else off the platform said, "Don't touch him." And so he stops and he looks and he realizes the reason he's not supposed to touch him is because he's near that third rail. The third rail is the one that carries powerful electricity and it runs the train. And if you touch that, then you are connecting with a direct source of electricity. Don't touch him. So he looked at the man and he stopped short of him, and he noticed that the man who had fallen in was very close to the third rail, inches, and he indeed did grab the rail. So our hero here is watching this bolt of electricity go through the man, but what he noticed is that it didn't kill him. The man was slumped a little, but it didn't kill him. So he decided, somewhat impulsively, to reach over and grab him and pull him out. Well, he got electricity too, the hero did. He kind of passed out. And so when he woke up, he realized what had happened. And within a day or so, and this is in like 2015, this is the era of you can't do anything without somebody filming it, that he was filmed doing this, and it had already had hundreds of thousands of hits. And this man, his name is Jeremy Clifton, he was a hero, and he was being sung as a hero. And he didn't feel too much like a hero. He just felt that he did what needed to be done. But as he noticed, a few days went by, there were two different versions of this same video. There was the one that turned him into a hero, and he got interviews, and he got all kinds of atta-girls, atta-boys. And the other person who had fallen in was not the hero. He was the bad guy. Good guy, bad guy. And it was the same thing that happened, and he was a drunk. He was doing things he shouldn't have done, and he was the bad guy. Well, the hero puzzled over that because he didn't think that was right. He didn't think it was a good, bad thing. Somebody fell in, and they needed to be pulled out, was the way he saw it. So he sort of put that away as something to ponder, and he thought about why some people looked at it one way or another, but he stored that. So then fast forward some years, and he ends up being a student of psychology. And he runs across this study, couple of studies that really interested him. One was from a man who actually was one of the pioneers of what came to be known as cognitive behavioral therapy, because he is the one using a lot of other psychologists before him. But when he realized that people who were coming to be treated for depression, they felt worthless, they felt that nobody cared about them. Those kinds of beliefs are what they were carrying around. And he had the idea, what if the beliefs are not a symptom of their depression, but are what is causing their depression? And doesn't that sound familiar to those of us who know science of mind? What you believe is what you experience in your life, or the agreement. If I believe this, then this is how my experience happens. So indeed, over time, that cognitive behavioral therapy came to be a course of treatment, and it changed the life of many people who were being treated for depression. And they were essentially, there was training and there was a lot of work involved, but they were essentially encouraged to think a new thought about themselves. That if I thought I was worthless before, to come up with a different thought. And it changed the life of many, many people. Well, there was another psychologist that Jeremy Clifton studied in the course of his preparation, and one of them was a man whose name was Ken, I think Ross, and he was observing how groups of people respond differently to the same event. And so he started out looking at some footage that happened in the Middle East. And it was the same footage. And in the course of studying and testing, and he had two different groups look at the same footage. And if you were, this was an Israeli-Arab conflict, if you were an Israeli, then you thought the conflict was biased against you, your group. If you were Arab, the same video was biased against your group, and they firmly believed that. So then the puzzle comes in. What is it that's causing people to look at the same thing and come up with different views? And of course, that has modern ramifications that we might be aware of, but what these psychologists are looking at is, what is it within us that enables us to do that, that helps us to think about things in a different way? And they began to think about the worldview. So Jeremy Clifton is moving through his own education, and he eventually gets his PhD, and so he starts working on these kinds of ideas. And he's asking people, he does surveys of people, and he's investigating how people get to be the way they are. And so most people believe that our life experiences help us to be and frame how we approach the world. And indeed, in a class I was just teaching, 30 minutes ago, we were talking about something in this book, and the individual in my class said, well, I'm very fortunate because I grew up and he gave some favorable circumstances, so I think that makes it easier for me too. And he went on to say that. And so that's how he thinks it was, whereas someone who has been born under less fortunate circumstances is more likely to see the world differently. And so in the research that Jeremy Clifton did, that's what people thought. He wasn't so sure. And that's partly because of his own experiences. He had a great grandfather, a great relative who was in World War II, and he was a forensic dentist, and so he repaired people's teeth and faces from combat. So it was a pretty gruesome job. But even before, he was this kind of man that our Jeremy Clifton knew as a boy, that always said when something happened, he says, okay, you learned that lesson because bad things can happen and you need to be ready. You need to always take care of yourself and be ready for those things. And so his grandfather, after his World War II experience, continued in that same vein, that you need to watch out because the world's a dangerous place and you need to be ready for it. And so then also in his younger time, he had the occasion to meet a woman who was from Poland, and she was a person who went through the Holocaust, and she was at Auschwitz at the end of the war. And she tells the story. She had seen other Polish people gunned down in front of her, and she was on the side of the road that got taken to a concentration camp. She was moved around. She was in several concentration camps. And at the end of the war, though they didn't necessarily know it at the time, it was Christmas Eve, and she was sick. She was in an infirmary, and she was lying in a bed. And there was another young woman next to her. And so she tells this story to young Jeremy. She said, we reached out and held hands with each other. And when I held hands with her, I knew that the world was a magical place, and that that good things happen, and that is absolutely, God is here, is present, and fully with me. So we have two people who went through some terrible things, but their worldview was quite different. And so that's what intrigued Jeremy Clifton. And so he went through a lot of thinking. And I keep coming back to science of mind. The thing that you believe, the thing that you hold the most dear, is what you're going to outpicture. Now, the question is, whichever worldview that you have, how do you apply it and what's happening? And that is interesting to me as well. And so I started thinking about this, and in looking at what happens in the world, he studied what he thought was, what he and his colleagues came to call a primal worldview. He came to think, and he's not understanding why this happens exactly, but he came to believe that all of us have what he called a primal world belief, is what he put it. But it's not quite a belief, because he thinks of it as like a lens. And I think of an optometrist. Most of us have had an eye exam at some time or another, and they have this machine, and they keep giving you different lenses to look through. And that's what he's talking about. Depending on the lens that we look through, we see things differently. And one of the things I remind myself over and over again is no matter how many of us see exactly the same thing, see the same thing objectively, we don't all see the same thing. And that's very challenging for me to understand. I do know that it's true. And it is, so in accounting for that, when someone has a different view than mine, I have to know that they see things differently, see the same things differently. And that word for today, that word that is for the season for nonviolence, kindness, is really, that's a place that it can come into play. Instead of some anger because your view is different from mine, kindness is what we talk about. And so in the parables, when Jesus pointed out the differences, he was never negative in the way that he presented the parables. I think this is very interesting. His teaching, and Ernest Holmes is the same, he rarely says anything about what's wrong. He's telling you what is right. And he's talking about that you treat for something as a principle and simply know that this is how it outpictures in your life. What we can't always account for, either individually or certainly not for anyone else, is what are those lenses that come into play that, yes, I believe this, but as I said a couple of Sundays ago, in spite of what I believe and what I know I believe, I've recognized more than once that I don't walk on water. And indeed, when Jesus was at this one of his sermons on the Mount, he was going to a place over across the way. They're in a boat, and he just takes off to walk. And so Peter comes after him, and Peter begins to sink. And so what does he say? He says, "Oh, ye of little faith." And so I don't walk on water. And so that tells me that there's a lack of faith in there that I can't understand. Ernest Holmes also says that we can only embody that which we understand. And the understanding is different from knowing. Understanding means that in this relative world, there is that limit that somehow I'm putting on myself by my lack of understanding. And so moving forward with this primal world belief and thinking about that, what Jeremy Clifton came to believe, and there were many, many ways that he and his colleagues both, that most people have a view of the world that it's a good place or it's a bad place. Whether it's conscious or not, it's a good place or it's a bad place. The people who believe that it's a good place have wonderful outcomes, and the people who think it's a bad place are more likely to expect bad outcomes. It's not connected to how well off you are. It is not connected to intact families. It's connected to something primal within the people that hold the views. And I think it's a fascinating concept. And they're not trying to explain how it happened. So one of the things they have is something called a primal world belief survey. So I've got some copies of that. So if you want to take that, there's a 99-question one, there's an 18-question one, and there's just a 6 one for people who don't have that much time. And you can just check it out. And so it is, I haven't taken it, so I'm not touting it. I'm just saying that it would be interesting to see, and you could be interested in the questions that they ask. But in closing, I think one of the things I wanted to think about is, I brought the book partly because today we went on an entirely new parable. And it wasn't about disagreement, it wasn't about any of that. It's about putting new wine in old wineskins. That you can't rethink a new idea with the same mindset. And so the part that came, I had to stop. We do this with screen share. We're all reading this together. And I had to stop the screen share because I was just gobsmacked that I am reading in this parable the same things and minds and ideas I've put together to come and stand here today. And I'm just astounded. So I felt like I had to hold the book so that, whatever ideas come from the book are what I wanted to share. And it says that if you grant the creative power of your own thought, and you have, with one fell swoop, cut the connection between all of that disbelief, all of that doubt, right out from under you, and you are left with a fresh idea. He acknowledges that changing our mind is not easy. It's not even what people seem to want to grab onto. But when you recognize that this is a new idea, and I can't put it in the same container that I had the old idea, then I take a step back and create a new landscape in my own mind to be ready to harvest the fresh ideas that come. And who knows, you may have them just drop in to you as you're open and receptive to all things happening, simply as it happened to me 30 minutes ago. It just dropped into me to say the same thing another way, just in case I needed the reinforcement. And I always say that God is good to me. But you know, God is good to everyone when we open to that grand idea that God is here for me, is here for me, is here everywhere for me. That whole fresh, creative way of thinking is always mine for the accepting. So the law of agreement is that I'm careful about what I agree to. I'm very careful in my own mind about what I agree to, because the cosmic engine has been started. And if I'm going to drive it with something I don't agree to, I may not like where I get. I might not like the destination. So I want to be careful. And so that is the idea that Ernest Holmes says you have to believe. It is a very, very powerful statement, and it matters what you believe, and it matters that you use all the creative energy that you can pour into that belief as you analyze all the aspects of it. What do I really believe? Am I paying lip service to this, or do I really believe? And that's the challenge of our lives, isn't it? So what I am knowing is that everyone in the sound of my voice and beyond is able to take in a fresh thought that I am a child of God, expressing in a divine way. And everything I do thoughtfully and with care unfolds in the highest and best way for all concerned. And I simply say yes, and I allow it to be. And so it is. And I will put copies of this where you can get the surveys, if that's what you would choose to do. It may be interesting, and I'll put them on the table out there, and that's what we'll do. So this is the time where, at the end of a service, where we return those portion of the gifts that we've been given, and we say the prayer over our gifts as we say, divine love consecrates my gift. It goes forth to heal, to bless, and to prosper. All of those gifts and all of those receipts. I rejoice in the sharing of my good, and I release my gift with love, and so it is. So this is also a time when we invite you, if you have questions or comments, and even the people that are on YouTube, if you have anything that you want to share, we are happy to do that. There's plenty of time at this point. And so does anyone have anything? You raise your hand, and I think Reverend Valerie is going to give you a microphone so that everyone can share. That way the people at home on YouTube can also hear what you're saying, Debbie. So thank you.
I didn't know that it was me. I wanted to say thank you, Catherine. I would like to listen to that sermon on repeat for the next however long it takes, because that was just stinking amazing. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, synchronicity is speaking. I was talking with a friend this morning, and we were on and talking about science of mind and sharing the untethered soul to everybody I talked with. Anyway, I said the most important thing is to be authentic and be yourself. Anyway, so I hang up and I'm getting ready to come here, and I open Science of Mind, March 8th. Be yourself. And when you said that about 30 minutes ago,
Yes.
and part of, I'm having hearing difficulties, I'm solving it, but it's like we have 2 ears and 1 mouth.
Yes.
You know, listen, for heaven's sake. So I text my friend, and he was amazed also. So thank you so much, and I agree with Deb. Let's listen to this over and over.
Well, what is often repeated in the parables is something that Jesus said. It says, let him who has eyes to see, and ears to hear. And he doesn't just mean the words in what you see. He's meaning that spiritual truth that is coming through too. So that is, and you heard it. You absolutely heard it all over. Yes. Hi.
Hi. I actually was talking with someone about the wineskins concept just like 2 days ago also.
Of course.
And,
of course.
But when I'm sitting here, and I've been making a lot of changes in my life related to my work as a teacher. I've talked about it here before, and it just helped me to see that some of the, I guess like the anxious thoughts I've been having lately is like the bursting of these old things that I was calling reality in the past, and it's like, I know there's a bigger reality, but in the past, what it was the word you said to, I agreed to those. So it's like scary at times because that part of me that agreed is going, what are you doing? This is what we agreed. This was reality. You're saying something, so it was really helpful to hear you describe that. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, there's reality, and then there's my version of reality, right? I think that's true for all of us. It's what we see. Anyone else? Oh, yes, Anne.
That's okay.
I love having
It
the
makes us
comments, and I know people at
I could
at
have done
home
it
do
when
too.
you were right
So-
here, but well, I would say there was so much, and actually, it's I agree. This all of us, and probably them too. That I will listen to this again. This is so good, but when you, God, I feel like I'm going to cry, but when you said that part about the 2 ladies in the concentration camp and holding hands, and the one saying that it's a wonderful world, basically, and I know everything's going to be all right, it did make tears come to me, but I was thinking also, there was a woman that I spoke to yesterday who's in our Spanish class at Founders, and she was telling me such a sad story, and I thought, oh, wow, my Spanish is okay, and actually I understood everything she said. I was really like, wow, that's pretty good, but I thought she really needs a Spanish-speaking cultural person, to talk with us about, but I thought, what could I say to her? And when you told that story about the women, because that was what I wanted her to know, because she had said, I don't know for sure Science of Mind is for me, but I love the philosophy, but I'm just not sure. And I thought, just that was so powerful to me and was kind of like what I was looking for to share with her. So thank you for that.
Right. And Jeremy Clifton met this woman, and he prefaced meeting her by saying he was on a choir trip, so there was a group of people he was with, and everybody, her name was Rose, and he said everybody wanted to talk to her. She was this wonderful woman, and she put out this wonderful energy, and he said, I was so grateful that I got my time with her, and he describes the scene. It was just the 2 of them, and how he was very much in awe of her even before she told the story. But it helped him to crystallize what you're just saying, that it's her worldview that has brought all of this goodness and that she's exuding. That is what it's coming from. It's a belief that she has.
Thank you for that addition.
Yeah.
All right, we have a question from YouTube.
Yes.
Sydney Glass, he wants to know, does Reverend Catherine see the grand idea as involution that brings out the evolution of our world experience?
Does involution bring the evolution of our What
Yeah,
was the
that's correct. Do you
the
see the
world that we
grand
see
idea?
or how we experience it? Well, that is what Ernest Holmes says, that we when we speak that, we get that word from, and then we evolve from what we learn and how we experience in the world, from involution and then evolution. And that is the way that, if you're asking me in this particular worldview, what I'm not sure about in the scientifically proven things that these scientists are working with is what happens in the minds of the people who have, if the world is a bad place, the world is a good place. That is something that I am curious about. But I'm much more curious about what I do with it. I think is that not sure what the question actually means in that sense, but my curiosity is no matter what happens, let's say that I take the survey and it turns out that it says that I believe the world is a bad place. I'm not expecting that, but I think if I'm going to take the 99 question because I want it to go at all the things. There may be something that I don't know about myself that I may learn about this. But what I do believe in the conscious sense, which is what I'm talking about, that what I truly believe, at least to the level of my understanding, is absolutely what outpictures in my life. I also know that there are times in my life where things happen that I don't like. And they do. So how that happens is something that happens that I can figure out on my own. But what I really know is no matter what happens that I don't like, what I do with it from that point is a conscious choice. And I take it as something that is good for me, even though I don't happen to like it. Because I find something, I grow something, and I do that. That's always my intention. I will absolutely say that. But I also keep reminding myself I do not walk on water. So it is, but that is absolutely my intention. And what Ernest Holmes says is our intention and our word is what we outpicture. And that's what we do. Maybe you have to trip over something in order to get there. Maybe that's what it is. That there's something I hadn't learned that I need to learn. I'm making that up. I don't know about that part of it. I hope that Sydney Glass has some explanation. Ask the question again if I circled around it and didn't answer.
Sydney says thank you, so I think he's satisfied.
Okay. Any other questions? Well, that ended that, Sydney. There we go.
One more. Hold on just a second. You're welcome.
Well, continuing my thoughts, this morning, the person I was talking to is a really good friend, but he's a man.
He's a man.
Yes. And he said, you think women think differently. And he was on about when you sail your boat and how the tiller, whatever. And he said, I'm just going to do that. And I said, honey, you're still human. And then I said, it's simple, but not easy. And when you were sharing all of that, that's what it's about. And one of the things that happened with me in my studies, I would write a paper and do all my work, and at the end of it would say, what did you learn? I had to redo the whole thing because it asked me that important question.
Right.
And the thing that they said to me, how you handle the issue is the issue.
Yes.
And so I had to add that part because it was so much fun to talk with the male version of how he was going to get that boat going, and and it isn't anyway. But I love the idea that we can talk with each other and agree.
Or even disagree.
And I was going to say, or disagree. And it's just wonderful. And what I've learned is people and books and music and anything comes to wake us up, to get our attention. So
Yes.
I'm reading Listening Path with Deb. And it's just learning how to be in the world and pay attention.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
When you were talking about it's how how you approach we also say that it's not what happens to you, it's how you respond to it, what you do about it. That's another kind of a cliche, but that is no matter how bad the cow plop is, what I do after the cow plop is really what defines me as a person. Anyone else? Okay, I think we've answered the question. Gosh, this has been great. Thank you all for asking and being here. I really, really appreciate this. Thank you. So I think we're off for our day, and I'm going to go put my surveys out there. And so I've got plenty, I think, so.